Hey Gators and sports fans, get all your Gator talk, news, analysis, and opinions on the Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning podcast. Find us on your favorite podcast platform or watch us on Facebook Live between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. every weekday. Pod Up, because we are Gator fans. So say, it's great to be a Florida Gator.
Good morning and welcome to a Thursday edition of Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. This Thursday, you know what that means? That means we got our good friend, our college football analyst, Brent Beaird, going to talk a little college football, what's going on with the playoff expansion. Also, if you missed it last night, big win for the Gators. Without Colin Castleton, Mississippi State has a big lead. Gators battle back, take the lead and blow out the Dogs, and it was a much-needed win. Congratulations to the Gators. Chobo played extremely well. Big win, no question about it. Let's go ahead and head on over to the Titan MR hotline. And as I mentioned, we're joined by our good friend Brent. You can follow Brent Beaird on Twitter at Brent Beaird. Good morning, Brent. How are you, my man?
Shane, doing well. It again is amazing how much stuff there is going on, frankly, right now, and just comings and goings, and unfortunately, people that we have lost this week in death, but still there are big issues going on with expansion, and also obviously with the portal is kind of quite busy. So even though that nothing going on the field, there's plenty going on off the field.
There he is. And you mentioned we lost a great one. I mentioned it yesterday on my program, and gosh, just his voice makes you think of the Saturday night college football. Ron Franklin was one of the greatest of all time, was the main, I guess, the national crew, he and Mike Godfrey on the Saturday night game on ESPN. Did you know him at all?
We had met a few times, but really didn't have any kind of a relationship with him except to say hello. But Ron Franklin was truly one of the best play-by-play guys that there's ever been. He had a tie to Ole Miss, too, that was interesting. But to put this in perspective, and we remember this, some of our listeners may not, but Ron Franklin and Mike Godfrey were easily the Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler of their time. They were the primetime national game on ESPN every Saturday night. And look, Franklin, I still, I'm not going to say he was the best there's ever been or anything like that, but he was extremely good, well thought of. He was a play-by-play voice for the Houston Oilers and at University of Texas at some point. So he kind of went up the ladder, but he did pass away this week, born in 1942. But again, I mean, it was a Saturday night staple, wasn't it, Shane, to turn on, and they were at the basically. I know CBS obviously had the ESPN 3:30 game, but they had the 7:30 game or 8 o'clock game, depending on where it was. But look, I will not hesitate to say though that Franklin was up there with Keith Jackson. Keith Jackson, to me, probably was the greatest of all-time play-by-play guys, but I invite our listeners sometime to Google both Franklin and Keith Jackson, and just when you've got a little bit of time, and just sit back and enjoy it. It's just unbelievable.
It really is. We got a couple of Facebook Lives here brought to you by Meldon Law, the only personal injury attorney law firm partner of the Florida Gators. Chris says, if you hadn't seen Barstool's sports video exonerating McElwain on the shark photo, it is a much watch. I did see that. Have you seen that, Brent?
I haven't yet. That's interesting, but no, not yet, but I will.
Well, you know, those Barstool guys, they're crazy. So they went and did the research. They found the dude that looks just like McElwain, and then it was well done. It was very funny as well. Coach Mack's actually in it. So you got to go watch it because they both meet at the end of the little. It's about a 7-minute clip if I remember correctly. Let's see, a couple other Facebook lives here before we jump into it. Brad says Gators shooting 51% from the floor last night was great to see. Yeah, Brad, I agree. To win, you have to score, and you got to make shots. And they made some shots, and they made some threes. The big difference in the game was making the threes last night.
Yes.
Brent, we got a question here for you. And you may want to address this as we get closer to Alabama. But John has a question for you. He says, Brent, with starters like Jermaine Burton and Darnell Washington hitting the portal coming off of winning a national championship, can you make any sense of that? He doesn't get it.
Well, I mean, these guys are just looking for. It's just a different day. I get the frustration with the portal. I really do. But these guys are looking for, and particularly, just a different kind of offense that's going to really pad their numbers. Frankly, along with that, Jermaine Burton this year had 26 catches for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. What Jermaine Burton wants to do is to go somewhere in Alabama, LSU, and A&M's mentioned as options, and instead of catching 26 passes, he wants to turn that around and catch 62. That's what he's looking for at this point. I get the questioning of why would you leave the defending national champions. But in the long run, Shane, is that a decent guess as to why he wants to go somewhere else?
Probably so. And Darnell Washington, isn't he the 6'8" tight end?
Yeah, he's 6'7", but
6'7"?
Still, he's tall. To your point, yes, absolutely. And look, he would be. He's going to be a real target wherever he goes. Along that line, certainly keep that in mind. Now let me be clear on this. Just to dovetail with that, John Fitzpatrick, one of Georgia's tight ends, said on Tuesday that he's leaving and going to the draft. So I wanted to throw that in there too. But look, after you win the national championship, you're going to have some guys who are coming and going, and we see that with Georgia.
Yep, no question. Chip Kelly has signed a new deal out at UCLA. Think that was a good move on their part?
Well, at least they didn't give him a 10-year deal, as we were seeing during the off season. 4-year deal. They were 8-4 last year. Their best record since 2014. Now, again, the reason we bring this up is obviously Chip Kelly was on the Gator radar before Dan Mullen was hired. So people wonder how he was doing at UCLA. And that has been a tough rebuild. Southern Cal has been a tough rebuild. Now, I think with Lincoln Kennedy out at Southern Cal, that's going to be put into warp drive coming up. But to Kelly's credit, he's been pretty steady, and they have stood by him as evidenced by this new deal.
The Big Ten paid out each 14-member school, $38 million, a little bit less than what they paid a couple of years ago. Is that all based just on COVID? Basically,
they deducted $55 million for COVID testing. That's a chunk of change, isn't it, Shane? For that to happen. Now, listen, there aren't going to be a whole lot of fans in the South who are feeling sorry for the Big Ten losing money last year because the Big Ten wanted to shut down college football and not be able to play at all, and that absolute unmitigated foolishness that they tried to do. Fortunately, Greg Sankey stuck to his guns and wanted to have a season, and they were able to to do that. But the Big Ten wanted to flex a little bit and get everybody to follow them. Fortunately, for the sake of college football, that did not happen. So, and look, Shane, you and I both know the Big Ten's not lacking for money all the way around, and they'll be fine. But I can assure you that there were a lot of people in the South who weren't real sympathetic about them losing money from last year.
Not at all. Wrap Spot's expanding, folks. They're opening a second location in the heart of Gainesville, 1931 North Main Street. Wrap Spot's teamed up with Vibrant Vinyl to offer color change wraps, advertising wraps, custom striping, hood wraps, and wall wraps. Go check them out. That's Wrap Spot. We're speaking with Brent Beaird on the Titan MR hotline. A couple of things I got to get to here, Brent, on the Facebook Live questions brought to you by Mellon Law. Andy says, an encouraging stat line on our new offensive lineman, Osiris Torrance from Louisiana. 37 starts, 1,146 pass blocking snaps, no sacks given up. It's a Sun Belt competition, but he may be our best offensive lineman. Look, here's where I'd like Gator fans to just sit back. I know we've brought a lot of Louisiana guys here. There's nothing wrong bringing those kids here. You know, you see a lot of D1 players, or Power 5 guys, I should say, transfer down to their level. Just because they're transferring up to a Power 5 doesn't mean they can't play. If you, and this has nothing to do with the Gators or college football, but my point is, when you watch a Monday night football game or a Sunday night game, and they go across the ticker and they say, Brent Beaird, offensive guard from Louisiana Monroe. Then they talk about this guy from Corpus Christi, Texas University. Not everybody comes from a Power 5. And what I'm saying is there is talent out there. You check out an NFL roster. They come from a lot of these group of 5. So, yeah, this guy's definitely going to help us. I don't know if I made my point very well there, but you follow what I'm saying, Brent?
Well, let me dovetail with that. And I'm going to say this every week for a long time. Billy Napier really knows what he's doing, and I'm going to underline that and put exclamation marks by it. Now he does it very quietly, and he's going to do it in a different way. But Gator fans really need to understand here that the players he's bringing in are guys that he knows. So he is a really good judge of talent. Now, does that mean that all these kids are 5 stars like Shane's saying? No, but they're good football players. And that's the thing that has got to be taken into account here with this. And I'll give him some more credit for this. Now, he is treating Emory Jones well. Now, Emory Jones is not going to be the starter, in my opinion, but they're handling his situation with some class and giving this guy some respect for what he's done for the team, and which is something I appreciate. But still, with the guys that they've signed, Kamari Wilson, Shamir James, Chris McClellan, ETN, what he's doing in recruiting right now, Shane, cannot be underestimated, because he is doing, frankly, in my opinion, an incredible job.
Yeah, Daniel says, I have hope in Billy. We needed some roster changes. I'm happy to see it. Yeah, that Osiris kid was like one of the top 100 players graded out in America at any level. John says the best wide receiver in the history of NFL came from an HBCU in Mississippi Valley. That's Jerry Rice. Not only that, John, but the best running back in the history of the NFL came from Jackson State University and Walter Payton. So,
sure did.
So yeah, there's so many good players, and just because they're not a 5-star now, obviously we know what Alabama and Georgia, and that's where Billy is going. But in the time being, if you got good players and you know they're good players, and Billy knows if they can play big time Power 5 football, or he wouldn't be offering them. So, all right, Brent, I guess the biggest topic that's been going on in college football is this expansion stuff, and I haven't followed it closely. I don't know if our listeners have. Can you kind of give us a brief synopsis of, is it the ACC that's screwing this whole thing up?
Yeah, well, they are the obstructionist right now. Jim Phillips, the new commissioner, has made a lot about how his conference, that he's talked to different teams and they really don't want to play any more games, and he's concerned about player safety and things of that nature. The best way I can say this is look, when these commissioners say things, there's always something on the surface, and there's also more underneath. And I give Matt Hayes credit for this. Matt's a local guy here, does a really good job. He had some commentary this week on this, as far as to drill down a little bit deeper. And what Matt said is multiple industry sources believe there are two overriding reasons for what Phillips said. Number one is they're trying to control some of the SEC power, and an attempt to force Notre Dame into the ACC to supplement the ACC's undervalued media rights deal that's going on here. I won't belabor the point too much here. This is a lot of rhetoric, frankly. I mean, when he talks about player safety, college football, to its credit, has done a lot over the last few weeks and months and years on player safety. So they're dealing with the issue. It's not that they're not dealing with it. As a matter of fact, that there's a proposal that came out this week about even cutting down on contact during spring practice. So, I mean, that, to me, that issue is being addressed as much as anything else. Here's the bottom line with this stuff, frankly, is if you're Jim Phillips in the ACC, and we cover this as closely as we do the SEC, is if you don't have a 12-team playoff, like the years where Clemson doesn't have a good year, i.e. this year, the problem is they're going to have a 12-team playoff sometime just to get in it. The Pac-12 is the same thing. So, look, and again, these guys have been very selfish. Instead of sitting down like Jim Delaney and Mike Slive did and coming up with a 4-team playoff after Alabama and LSU played in 2011, that's the thing that they need to do. The playoff situation is not dead. It's a little bit dormant right now. They're going to meet in a few weeks, and I still think they will come out with some kind of a compromise on this, hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah, back to some Facebook Live comments here. John says, Walter Payton is your opinion since Emmett passed. Yeah, Emmett's the all-time leading rusher, but my two eyes told me that Walter Payton and Barry Sanders are the two greatest NFL running backs I ever saw.
Right, I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, nothing against him, and I love Emmett, but if Walter had played behind that offensive line and Barry Sanders had played behind that offensive line, good gracious. Okay, Brent, so we got another question here for you from John. He says, it's brought to you by Metal Law. He says, Brent, if they expand the playoff to 12 teams, do you see 3 or 4 SEC teams in the semifinals?
Yes, that's very possible. But see, people can't get fixated on that. That's not the point to this. The point to this is if you expand it to 12, right now, I'll say this very quickly. Right now, a 4-team playoff, when it comes November, you've got maybe 8 to 10 schools and fan bases who are excited. Okay, if you expand this to 12, you're going to have about 20 schools in the month of November who are waiting with bated breath on every play and everything that comes out from the media on the playoff. The thing you're doing here is creating an enormous amount of excitement with 12 teams that you would not have if we just stick to 4.
Yep, that's true. Talking about transfers, when coaches get fired, it seems like they all go to Tuscaloosa and work for old Saban. It looks like kids that go in the transfer portal from a lot of Power 5 schools now are heading down to Orlando to play for Gus Malzahn at UCF. Yeah,
there's some names folks understand. Keymore Gamble from Florida is one of those. Kobe Hudson from Auburn. Virginia's right tackle, Ryan Swoboda. John Rice Plumlee from Ole Miss are among the guys who are going down there. So they look at that as exciting offense and maybe have an opportunity to win a championship in Central Florida. So right now, that's kind of the one of the favorite places to go.
Yeah, and back to the playoffs. John says if they expand, he sees a lot of blowouts happening, kind of like we had on Wild Card Weekend. Yeah, I mean there will be blowouts, but it gives those other people the excitement around the country to be in the playoffs and just to be a part of it. Brent, has anybody done any punch the numbers on like school X has had this many kids enter the transfer portal?
Well, you've got a little bit of that that's going on. From the NCAA transfer portal, there's a January 18th update about scholarship players in the portal since August 1st here. Maryland, if I'm reading this right, Maryland's had 21, Virginia's had 20. Now, again, this is over a period of several months. Ole Miss, 17, and then you've got Florida State among Auburn, Colorado, in Arkansas with 16. So there's a decent amount. Your latest portal numbers, that this was on the 18th, 1,194 Division I scholarship players have entered since August 1. 48 of them withdrew. 545 announced new schools. 47% of the portal players have announced new schools. Now, this is the problem Shane and I have with this. 601 Division I scholarship players remain in the portal.
Mm-hmm. And I wonder how long they've been sitting in that portal.
A long time.
Yeah, and that's the biggest issue that these kids need to really think about is, your college is being paid for, your housing is being paid for, your food's being paid for.
Yes.
And you go in that portal and nobody wants you. You're back at home sitting on the couch or working at some local Walmart or something, trying to figure out what you want to do the rest of your life. So it's a tough situation, no question about it. Brent, a lot of we know there's been some new coaching changes. A lot of coordinators are now head coaches. But tell us who you think the top 5 coordinator hires have been so far this year.
We mentioned Matt Hayes about this a few minutes ago, and I'll give a tip of the cap to him about this. Will Muschamp, if people have not heard this, is he is the defensive coordinator now at Georgia. He's going to be a co-defense coordinator. I think with Schumann, the Mike Denbrock at LSU is the offense coordinator. He was previously at Cincinnati. Charlie Weiss Jr., not senior, but junior, is the new OC at Ole Miss. He previously was at South Florida. Austin Davis is the new OC at Auburn. He was with the Seahawks. And then Patrick Toney, who impressed Matt, was previously obviously at Louisiana as D coordinator. Now he's D coordinator at Florida. So those are some of the guys to look for that Matt has mentioned who should do a good job this year.
Yep. Arch Manning, who is a 2023 kid, obviously got great bloodlines. Billy Napier, I know a lot of Gator fans are excited that Billy went to visit him. Billy's got a relationship with the Mannings. I do know that for a fact.
Yes.
And people are like, well, Dan would have never gone there. Arch Manning had zero chance of playing for Dan Mullen and playing in Dan Mullen's type of offense, which you have to see what Billy's going to run here. But at least Billy is in the mix, so to speak, or at least visiting a player like Arch Manning.
Absolutely. And he's at a high school in New Orleans and doing very well, obviously. Now, coaches that have visited him this week, Kirby Smart's come out. Shane mentioned Napier. Nick Saban is supposed to be there tomorrow. So, you've got a lot of guys who are going out and who are doing well. Arch Manning, being the grandson of Archie, is a tremendous football player. It's going to be fascinating to see where he goes. Texas is also in this, but hey, Shane, the good thing about it is he's going to get pretty good advice from uncles and grandfather, right?
Yeah, there's no question. And I've come out on a limb, and I know the Mannings I wouldn't say very well, but I've gone on a golf trip with them to Scotland back in 2007. Archie was like my guy growing up as a kid because he played with my dad at Ole Miss,
Sure.
and I was a Saints fan, and they were horrible. But my list for Arch Manning is Georgia, Alabama, and Texas. I think he's going to end up at one of those three schools.
I agree totally with that. Yes.
Yeah. This was interesting. I saw in your notes you sent me, Brent. The Tate Martell. I want to say he was like the number one quarterback in America coming out several years ago, has finally decided to hang up playing football after transferring to 3 different schools.
Tate Martell was the National Gatorade Player of the Year in 2016. He has gone from Ohio State to Miami to UNLV. Probably a lot of people didn't even realize he was at UNLV, and now is retiring from football to go into business. Now, I guess the lesson here is people can have all the hype that they can get, but and Shane, look, I hope the guy's successful. I really do. I think part of the problem here is Tate was never really at one place long enough to settle down and kind of work out some of the problems. So that is unfortunate, but just because you're the National Player of the Year does not mean it's going to be successful.
No, not at all. And one reason he didn't make it is because he wasn't a very good thrower of the football. And to play quarterback at a high level, you got to be able to throw the damn football.
Exactly. Yes.
Anyway, we've had a lot of people on Facebook Live chime in about Gale Sayers. Yes, Gale Sayers, his career was cut short, and he was a phenomenal player, no question about it. John says Tate Martell was on the QB1 documentary on Netflix. Got a real dislike for him after watching that. Yeah, he wasn't a very big guy. I mean, he was but he was fast. He tried to change to play receiver or what have you. But good luck to him. If you've got joint pain in your knees, shoulders, hip, or back that won't go away, you need to check out QC Kinetics for long-lasting relief. No surgery, drugs, or downtime. Schedule your free consultation at QC Kinetics, 352-400-4550. We've got a text on the Titan MR text line. It comes from our good friend Darryl. So good morning, guys. Shane, could you ask Brent, where does he think JT Daniels is going to wind up?
Well, if people haven't heard, JT Daniels went into the transfer portal last night, so he is looking around. JT Daniels, obviously, he was impressive at times at Southern Cal. He was based on the sideline the whole year with an oblique injury. There's really not a whole lot of information, and there really wasn't even a whole lot of tape on him this year, to be honest. I mean, I've heard some SEC schools. I've seen Ole Miss in there a little bit. And then obviously he's from the West Coast, about the possibility of going back with that one. But the reality is right now, that's really open, and it's a good question. I appreciate the question, but Shane, when you don't play basically for a whole year, injury or not, aren't there going to be some schools that are going to be they may shy away from him because of the injury, and they really don't know all that's going on with him.
Very fragile player.
Yes.
Has a good arm, but there's a lot of dudes that have good arms out there. John says Stetson's coming back another year, despite Shane saying he should walk away now. Yeah, I was a little surprised Stetson's coming back. We'll talk about that when we get down here to Georgia, but good for him. Let's start the SEC roundup here with Alabama. I mean, I'm looking at this stat that you threw out here, Brent. That is truly amazing what they had this year in the passer, the rusher, and the receivers. Yeah,
for the first time in their history, as incredible as it has been, they had a 4,000-yard passer, a 1,000-yard rusher, and 2,000-yard receivers. Williams and Mechie, Brian Robinson, along with that, and also with Bryce. But even and look, people really. This is how much things have changed in Alabama. You're breaking all kinds of records because, Shane, as you know, for years, Alabama was like a lot of teams in the SEC. They were primarily a running team that with some play action passes, and we have to remember Alabama ran the wishbone for more than a decade too. So when you're starting playing 7-on-7 football like Alabama has, you're going to break a lot of these records, and that's what they did this year.
Yeah, I mean that's truly amazing to have that stats, and I didn't realize Alabama has 9 of their 11 starters coming back on their defense.
Yes, yes, they and I've said this all along. They will be much better next year than they were this year.
Yeah, that's scary. I didn't realize this either. But so Lane Kiffin has lost his defensive coordinator, his offensive coordinator, and now he's getting ready to lose his special teams coordinator, who has coached, who's done a good job at a lot of different places. I want to say he coached here at Florida for a little bit with Muschamp, but he's going to Alabama as well, right?
Yeah, Coleman Holzer is who we're talking about before he went to Ole Miss. He was at Texas and did a good job there. And he was also at South Carolina. You remember when he was at South Carolina, Shane? A lot of people probably don't, but yes, he's well thought of. And one that came about only last night, so timing's everything, I guess. But T-Rob, Travarius Robinson, who is the Miami defensive backs coach, who has been rumored about going a whole bunch of places, is coming to Alabama. He was a former Auburn defensive back, but he's also been the coordinator at South Carolina and coached defensive backs at Florida and at Auburn. So I'm curious if you know him, A, and then B, he is also well known as is a very good recruiter.
Oh yeah, T-Rob's a good football coach, has great relationships, and I'll be dang if he's going to Alabama. Good gracious. The rich get richer, right? We got a couple of Facebook Lives here brought to you by Meldon Law. Camp says, speaking of talent and how so many people make a big deal about talent is found and where they come from. Look at UF's top 3 recruits of all times, and how many years did those 3 have in the NFL? Brock Berlin, Ronald Powell, and Martez Ivey. You could throw in Bobby Sablehouse. He was the number 1 quarterback in America and never took a snap here. So, yeah, you never know. Never know who's going to pan out.
Right.
But good gracious, I can't believe all these dadgummit, Alabama just keeps getting players and coaches and you name it. Brent, let's talk real quick, as we mentioned, what's going on in Arkansas? Anything exciting happening out there for the Hogs?
Yeah, Malik Hornsby is the quarterback is coming back. He decided to go in the portal. He pulled his name out, so keep that in mind. Also, Alabama linebacker Drew Sanders, who went in the transfer portal, has landed at at Arkansas. They've also got Jaden Hasselwood, the Oklahoma wide receiver, who's really good, and also LSU freshman defensive lineman Landon Jackson. So Sam Pittman, doesn't he, Shane, continues to get it done. Now Traylon Smith, their running back at Arkansas, just entered the transfer portal. This was last night. Amazing all that happened last night. Kendall Briles, who is the Arkansas offensive coordinator, is rumored to be in some kind of talks with Miami. And I'm going to say this is a rumor for now, okay? Because they were also looking at, Miami was also looking at Jason Kendall, but he's staying at Toledo. So Kendall Briles, who's done a good job wherever he's gone, is I'm just going to say right now, he is a possibility at Miami. There's nothing confirmed on that yet.
And Auburn's picked up a couple of transfers. They lost some to Oregon, but then they got some in return, right?
Yeah, they did. And the latest thing to come from Auburn, this is really interesting. Derek Mason, the former Vandy quarterback, who's the Auburn defense coordinator, has emerged as a strong candidate for the Oklahoma State defensive coordinator job. So Mason, as a D coordinator, is really good. Now, Auburn has lost Kalen Newton at wide receiver into the transfer portal. By the way, that is That is Cam's younger brother, Kalen Newton, by the way. Auburn did get Robbie Ashford from Oregon, but he's a kid that really has not seen any action at this point. Lee Hunter's the defensive lineman is going into the portal. Chandler Wooten, the linebacker, is going to the NFL. He's really good, too. But they did get Eugene Asante from North Carolina. He wants to transfer to Auburn, too. J.J. Peags, who's a really good defensive lineman / tight end, is going into the transfer portal. So I think Shane, I think our viewers and listeners can figure pretty much every team in the SEC has got a list like Auburn does of coming and going, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Brent, you talk to a lot of people around the country in the national media. I want to get to Florida here. Just the things that Billy Napier has done, and people have heard about it, from the parking to the food to the housing.
Yes.
He's changed all that in a short period of time. But just what people are thinking or saying, around the country about the Florida Gators. There was always that saying back in the day. Bear Bryant said, if they ever get the right guy, they're going to wake up the sleeping giant, which basically Coach Spurrier did that. I would say, we've kind of gone into hibernation for quite some time. Do people think the Gators are on that verge of coming back?
Yes, they do. I mean, the people I talk to are really impressed with Napier. Now, listen, here's the thing with Billy. Billy's very reserved. He's somewhat introverted, and I don't know if shy is the right word, but there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody has their different personality. But the thing with Napier is Napier does a lot of things behind the scenes, and the thing that I hear consistently is just wait until about 2 or 3 years. And for our listeners, this is what Shane's been saying all along. This stuff doesn't happen overnight, but what he's doing behind the scenes is, and he's bringing about, I don't know, Shane, you probably heard the numbers more than me, but about 30 to 40 people overall on this staff. And people say, well, why in the world would he need all those people? Well, he learned that's what Nick Saban has done, and he has copied that at everywhere that he's gone at Louisiana. And that's the thing with Napier. You're going to hear stuff over the next few months, frankly, I think that's going to amaze people as to what he's accomplished. It's not going to happen immediately on the field, okay? But he's setting the groundwork. And Shane, don't you have to do that before anything actually happens? You got to get your people in. You got to get things going. And Napier is really big about relationships. And these are things you're going to be hearing, but it's coming, folks. I can tell you that.
Yeah, and what I've tried to tell people, and I don't think they've really understood this, but, I've been preaching the football standalone facility for the last 10 or 15 years, which there's more to it than that. But for us to be on the same level playing field as the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Clemsons, Ohio States, you name them, you have to have those things. And thank goodness we're moving into that this year. But that's the only reason Billy Napier came here. He basically said, we're going to do it the way that Alabama and Georgia and A&M are doing it. I'm going to need this amount of money. I'm going to need this amount of people in my organization, or I ain't coming. And so I salute Scott Strickland, whoever, the Board of Regents, whoever's in charge of signing off on this, because that was the only way we're going to be really competitive against those guys, is to be on the same level playing field. Now, if we can't win once we have all this stuff going on after a couple of years, then we got to reevaluate it. But he's definitely got us going in the right direction. And I'm extremely, extremely excited. Like Lauren says here on Facebook Live, we can't wait 2 to 3 years to beat Kentucky, Missouri, South Carolina, and Tennessee, in my opinion. I agree. You got to do it. Those are teams we cannot lose to the teams you're supposed to beat anymore. Camp says, I like what Nape is doing. He's out our sleeping giant. As for T-Rod, great coach and great recruiter by him. Not sure how big a deal this is for Alabama. Kids go to Alabama, want to go to Alabama. T-Rod, in my opinion, will be beneficial. Well, that's true. I mean, they're going to get who they want. But it's just, Saban loves having great recruiters, and T-Rod is one of those. Brent, before we let you go, I know we kind of kept you longer than normal, and I apologize. You got any nuggets before we get you out of here?
Listen, I've got a couple hours of nuggets, frankly, but I'll just kind of hit the highlights here. LSU has done amazingly well. Someone actually has tracked the transfer portal additions like they do the top 50 recruits in high school. And earlier this week, LSU had 13 signees from high school and 11 additions from the transfer portal. So, which means that they have really gone out or they've had a lot of people come to them. Works both ways. Virginia linebacker Wes Weeks is committed to LSU. Micah Baskerville, the linebacker, is coming back to LSU. Jerrod Jenkins, a wide receiver, is coming back to. Now at Kentucky, they have officially named Mike Stoops. Yes, that's the brother of the head coach, as his inside linebacker coach. And look, people can say that's nepotism. Well, it is, but if you're head coach of Kentucky, you just won 10 games. It's no big deal to hire your brother, especially if he can help you in that right chain. And that's what's going on in that situation too. Mississippi State, former Georgia wide receiver Justin Robinson, who entered the transfer portal, has announced he's transferring to Mississippi State. Malik Heath, you remember him? Their wide receiver is going in the transfer portal. He had 34 catches, 5 touchdowns. At Missouri, Stanford running back transfer Nathaniel Pete is expected to transfer to Missouri. At Ole Miss, Henry Parrish is transferring to Miami, the running back. We mentioned J.J. Peags is transferring to Ole Miss. South Carolina's added Jaguar assistant defensive line coach Sterling Lucas as one of their defensive coaches. At Tennessee, Harrison Bailey, who everybody loved a couple of years ago, their quarterback, is transferring to UNLV. A&M has had one of the better, maybe arguably the best recruiting class in the nation, or they will certainly tell you that. They've got a freshman running back, Darvin Hubbard, is going into the transfer portal. DeAndre Jackson, the A&M running back, will remain in the portal and not be in Nebraska. So I just hit a few of the highlights, Shane, of some different schools. Love to be able to do that. Appreciate the extra time. And again, people are maybe saying, isn't there a lot going on right now? Yes, there is, because at this point, Shane, 2 or 3 years ago, we were at this point of the year, besides recruiting, we were looking for things to talk about. This year, you and I could go 2 hours today.
Yeah, I mean, with the transfer portal, that's why they're going to have to do something like NFL free agency. Put no question. Between this month and that month, you can enter the portal, but it's crazy right now, and it's going to continue to be crazy. So
it is.
Good stuff as always, Brent. We appreciate your time. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll talk to you next week, bud.
You too, pal. Always enjoy it. Take care.
Yeah, that's Brent Beaird, our college football analyst. Join us on the Titan MR hotline. Going to take a timeout, come back, get to a bunch of your Facebook Live questions here. You're watching and listening to Pot Up with Matthews in the morning.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, won't back down. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. Comfort Temp, comfort is our business, peace of mind is our promise. QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Great Clips, it's gonna be great. Our Gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Celebration Point Town Center, South State Bank, Chris Doring Mortgage, Silverback Concrete Co. Some of our touchdown sponsors are MB Listing, McDonald's of Gainesville, My IT Masters, Gainesville Neon and Signs, 84 Lumber, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, Avera and Smith, Dowling Signs, Baker's Sporting Goods, Ruse Ogra Agent, State Farm Insurance, Silver Q Billiards and Sports Bar. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, visit potupwithshane.com and click the Advertise button. Again, thank you to all the great businesses that support the show. If you like what we are doing here, make sure you follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Welcome back to the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Celebration points where the Gators go to celebrate with premium brands like Nike, Regal Cinemas, Le Macaron, Dave & Buster's, Medici's, Palmetto Moon, and the HBC's restaurant, Spurs Gridiron Grill, now serving brunch on Saturday and Sundays. We'll see you at Celebration Point where the Gators go to celebrate. Got a lot of comments here. Thank you, Brent. Yeah, we appreciate Brent coming on and joining us every Thursday. He does a tremendous job. You can follow Brent on Twitter for all you Twitter folks at Brent Beaird. I want to get to This Day in Sports. It's brought to you by our good friends at Comfort Temp. Comfort is our business. Peace of mind is our promise. They're now hiring team members with all levels of experience, $1,000 signing bonus for qualified positions. Give Comfort Temp a call, 352-376-2366. This Day in Sports. How many of y'all remember this? In 1980, President Jimmy Carter announces U.S. boycott of the Olympics in Moscow. Do you think we should boycott this? What is the Winter Olympics starting here soon? Should we boycott those? What do you think about that? Andy says, Shane, why don't you have Lee Humphrey, Brett Nessel type pure shooter on our roster? Mike White has never seemed to have that kind of guy. I'm sure he's recruited some sharp shooter guys that just Myron Jones, the transfer from Penn State, was a tremendous three-point shooter last year for the Nittany Lions. He can't throw it in the ocean right now. Some of the shots he's taken have hit like the top of the backboard. And I mean, it's crazy, but that's a great question, Andy. I think you always need a guy like Lee Humphrey. You know, I've heard some, we have Chris Harry on who does a tremendous job covering the Gators basketball. He's with basketball team all day long during practice, shoot-arounds, games, what have you. He says Lee Humphrey, because he does the color with Mick on the games. He says Lee Humphrey goes out there and just puts on a show right now, shooting threes, just goofing around. John says he has had guys that were supposed to be shooters like Noah Locke and Myron Jones. Yeah. And he says Myron Jones has horrible. Yeah, you wouldn't want to learn how to shoot. He starts the ball on one side and it ends up over here. It's very, very strange. Let's see here. We got a text on the Titan MR text line. It says here, this is from Jonathan. Jonathan says, Shane, do you think Billy Napier is done with quarterbacks for this year, or do you think they sign one on National Signing Day? That's a great question. Honestly, don't know the answer. I would say he's only going to probably sign a quarterback, a high school kid, if somebody falls into his lap that's a top-notch thrower. I think right now Jack Miller was a guy that they had focused on in the transfer portal out of Ohio State. They got him. You got Anthony. Obviously, Emory is still on the roster. You got Jalen Kitna and Del Rio Wilson. So I think we got enough scholarship quarterbacks at this time. I still think some will transfer after spring ball, depending on how the depth chart looks. So we'll see. But good question. Good question. Let's see here. Cliff says, Jamal Wilkes. I remember him for the Lakers. Yeah, he had a funny shooting motion. John says they're going after Max Brown right now. All right, John, for us guys that don't follow recruiting on a daily basis, give us the breakdown of Max Brown, where he's from, what year he is, all that good stuff. Andy says, did I see that Bruce Arians got fined $50,000 for that head slap? Yeah, I saw the head slap. I mean, it was the heat of the moment. The fine is fine. I'm sure Arians didn't have a problem. I think after he did it, he probably regretted doing it. But that $50,000 would go to a good charity. So that's usually what they do with the NFL fines. They give them to charity. And I'm curious. I need to get in touch with one of my NFL guys, because when I played, you would get fined if your socks were not worn a correct way. And now I see The NFL used to always have the socks where you got the bottom portion is white and the top portion is a dark color with stripes or whatever. You had to wear them a certain way or you got fined. They'd have what we call the fashion police come around, people from the NFL during pregame warm-up, during the game, during sidelines. They'd like, look, I'm going to give you a warning. If you don't pull your socks up, you got too much white showing, not enough white showing, we're going to send you a fine. And guys would get, on Mondays or Tuesdays, they get these letters from the NFL. Now, some guys have all white socks on. Some guys have colored socks on. So I don't know. But anyway, all right, enough of that. Y'all don't care about that. John says Mac is also recruiting him. He's a 3-star QB, 41 TDs, 13 rushing touchdowns. He's a passing QB. And this thing just vanished. Where did it go? Passing QB that can run. Okay. Is he a 2022 or 2023? Mary, we appreciate you listening to our show. Be safe driving. Rick says no headbands either. Also, I asked the Bears. You're talking about Jim McMahon. Yeah. So anyway, all right, let's take our second time out, come back, wrap up this, what's the day? Thursday edition. You're watching and listening to Pod Up Matthews in the Morning.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, won't back down. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. Comfort Temp, comfort is our business, peace of mind is our promise. QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Great Clips, it's gonna be great. Our Gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Celebration Point Town Center, South State Bank, Chris Doring Mortgage, Silverback Concrete Co. Some of our touchdown sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, Adams Rib Company, Doreen Wiebe Realtor, Caldwell Banker MM Parish, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Wrap Spot, Okido America, Gators Dockside, Style Cuts, Big Mills Cheesesteaks. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, visit potupwithshane.com and click the advertise button. Again, thank you to all the great businesses that support the show. If you like what we are doing here, make sure you follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Welcome back to the Crime Prevention Security System Studios at South State Bank. We understand that small businesses need a community business partner that they can rely on. South State has 4 convenient Alachua County locations. South State Bank, banking for member FDIC. Really want to thank Brent Beaird for joining us on the Titan MR hotline. Make sure you tune in tomorrow. We got our Peachland Dentistry weekend picks. We'll get our NFL picks in. I'll pretty much know who I'm taking. John says, when are we going to have Tim Walton and Sully on? Season's quickly approaching. We will have them on. Yeah, we're about 30 days away, I think. Probably less for softball. But yeah, it's that time of the year, no question about it. And we will get those folks on. Really appreciate you guys chiming in. Make sure you tell all your friends and family to follow us and like us and do all that stuff on all the different social media platforms. You can listen to us pretty much anywhere nowadays. It's crazy. So anyway, enjoy your day. We'll talk to you soon. We'll see you tomorrow. Today's show's a wrap, brought to you by Wrap Spot. Take care.